Welcome to InterPartyConflict, the podcast where we answer your questions so you can have the best tabletop gaming experience possible. My name is Gabe.
My name is Jeff.
And we have a very special guest with us today, my friend Dave, aka Stiltskin Koopo 84.
Hello, everyone.
Woo!
Welcome, Dave. Thank you for listeners. You may remember Dave from episode 149. We had you on as a guest a couple of years ago.
Oh, was it that long ago?
I looked it up. Yes,
that's great.
Yeah, we before quarantine, we had a guest, the host of DMs of Vancouver, on in January of 2020, and then we didn't have anybody else for a really long time, for like a year and a half. And Dave was the last guest right before that. So you were the second to last guest before COVID.
Wow.
So, so welcome, Dave. Thank you for coming back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So Jeff and Dave, how are you guys doing today?
Good. I'm doing great.
Okay.
Doing pretty good.
I think we just both waited for each other there.
That's fine. That's fine. Dave, how you doing today?
I'm wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gabe, you were the rude one making us both answer at the same time.
It was like Matchbox cars when they go down the track and the Y and they.
That was my plan all along. I wanted to make it as awkward as possible for everybody involved, including the listeners.
Right. Yeah, you try to get the cars to crash mid-jump. Yeah.
Yep. Jeff, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah. Just basking in the new dog havingness. I don't know.
Well, we just recorded our bonus episode for July, which is about dogs.
Yes.
By the time this episode goes out, it will have been out for a couple of weeks now, I guess. But,
sure.
Yeah, if you guys want to hear about Jeff's dog, if you want to hear about our dog, if you want to hear about any dogs, we did a quiz of 20 dog questions as well. So
I think we did.
Really?
We did pretty good.
I think so.
Yeah.
That's quality right there.
That is quality. All sorts of dogs. Every dog was on that.
I haven't listened to it yet.
Morph.
Yeah. I know that. So we've been, Dave and I work together, and we've been off work for about a week and a half at this point.
Yeah.
So have you done anything exciting, Dave?
I've mostly been working on Discords, and my wife did buy me this really cool board game that we started playing right before we started recording.
Yes.
It's like a WWF thing. If there are any WWF nerds out there, like, we are one, spiritually speaking.
Sure. Hit us up on the Discord if that is the case.
Definitely, yeah. Stillskin Koopo is a WWF nerd. Not like new WWF, but like early 2000s and before that.
Sure. When it was like The Rock and Triple H and all that.
Yup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was into WWF around that time.
I would say first top three are Bret Hart, Undertaker, and Shawn Michaels, and I'm just leaving it at that.
Sounds good. I've never really been into. I know some of the names, but I've never really been into any sort of wrestling. So,
I owned a music album that was a bunch of.
Yeah, those were pretty great. Some of those, yeah.
That was a bunch of songs, because it wasn't just like because the wrestlers would come in and they'd have like intro music.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just like a disc, like an album of their intro music. Some of it was, but it was like original music inspired by the wrestlers and by like their intro music. Sometimes it'd be like a remix.
Okay.
It was, I don't know, it was one of the more nerdier things I've ever owned.
My buddy Adam had like, I think 2 discs in like 2 years in a row. He bought like the soundtrack of the famous wrestlers of that year.
Oh, okay.
It's so like, that's a little slice of like, we'll always have that Ahmed Johnson soundtrack and that Vader soundtrack to go back to.
Sure.
I wonder if I can find that disc. Anyway.
Well, yay, wrestling ball.
for sure.
I mean, it is. I feel like there are some parallels to wrestling and D&D.
Okay. I mean, I can see that. I can say there's storylines, there's heroes, there's faces, and there's heels.
And honestly, when we were unpacking this game on the table, I was explaining to Gabe, like, they each have hit points. Mm-hmm. It's only on a scale of 10, but I mean, it has caused me to hyper focus in an OCD way where, like, we have a nugget, and I place the nuggets on the floor, and I'm like putting all the cards displayed out on the nugget, and I'm like staring at them for like what seems like if you didn't know what I was doing, you'd walk in the room and be like, what is he looking at?
Okay.
But I'm like, I planned out a way to use D20s to roll initiative for these guys, and it was like trying to simulate an actual Royal Rumble.
I feel like there is a wrestling RPG out there.
Yeah,
I feel like I've heard it mentioned, but I can't think of what it's called. I'll try to find a good one and put it in the show notes or something.
Sure.
So I'm sure there's a lot of overlap in the fans of wrestling and the fans of D&D.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I've been on break. I've been trying to get a lot of stuff done around the house. I think I talked about it last time on our last episode. I've been 3D printing some stuff. I've been getting some stuff ready for a certain podcast related birthday party I'm going to be going to in a few days.
Oh, right.
So, yeah, just doing a lot of stuff. I painted some miniatures the other day.
And there's a really cool birthday present for that aforementioned podcast related.
There just may be a cool birthday present for the aforementioned podcast related birthday party. So yes, a lot of cool stuff. I also I visited my brother in Chicago yesterday. He's going through some health issues, so since I had the day off, I was able to go visit him. And yeah, just trying to use my time as best as I can before going back to work next week.
Boo work.
I think I'm going to make some more ribs probably tomorrow because they turned out really good last time.
Nice.
I'm glad you got that down.
Yeah, me too. Oh my goodness. It was so disappointing last year when I made those ribs and I was like, I spent the whole day doing it. I sat down, I was going to watch a movie and eat some ribs, and I took one bite and I was like, this is terrible.
Oh no.
This whole day has been a waste.
We had some ribs like that. We caught a special at like maybe Famous Dave's or something.
Mm-hmm.
It was like how can it be this inexpensive deal?
Sure.
And it was because it wasn't like barbecue sauce. It was that dry rub, and it was just like way too peppery and way too salty.
Yeah.
So I know the pain that you went through.
Sure. All right. So on that note, you guys want to go ahead and jump into this episode then?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. So I want you guys to imagine that it's late at night and you're walking down the street.
Okay.
And you hear some kind of a scuffle going on down an alleyway. So you poke your head down and you see that there's a group of ruffians are accosting what appears to be an old man. They knock him down. They take his cane away. They're kicking him. And he's crying out for help. Yes.
Is one of them bald? And is he wearing a vest with a skull on it?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
What is that a reference to?
Steve Austin.
Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah. You actually see there. You see Steve Austin. You see Hulk Hogan.
It's a Chicago street fight.
Oh no.
I was thinking just a bunch of wrestlers are beating up some old man. You see that it's Dusty Rhodes that they're beating up. And so what do you guys want to do? Do you want to join in the fight and beat up the old man with these wrestlers? Or do you want to save him? Do you want to call the town guard?
I say we call a ref.
Call in a ref.
Okay.
Pick up a folding chair and yeah.
Actually, a Chicago street fight you can't really call a ref because there's no rules. But we'll
come on.
I just remembered that after I said it. I have to be
okay. As long as you make it clear, so nobody at him.
Gabe, I'm going to do a search check to find a folding chair.
Okay, give me a search check, Jeff.
Okay, I got an 8.
You find an actual folding chair, not one of like the ones that's designed to not actually hurt the person you're hitting it with.
Oh, even better. Good.
So you run in there with a folding chair. Dave's calling a ref. Jeff knocks out one of the guys. You manage to scatter these wrestling ruffians.
I've got a better idea than calling a ref.
What's that? There
is a gold-plated limo parked right there, and I'm going to take someone's head and just smash it right into the hood.
Okay. So Jeff hits a guy with a chair. Dave smashes the guy's face into the inexplicably gold-plated limo.
Right, yeah, just happened to be there, yep.
Yep. You cause some damage. They scatter, and then you see that this old man. It is not Dusty Rhodes. You thought it was for a moment there, but
it's
no, actually,
his son Dustin Rhodes, Gold Dust.
I was going to say it's Ed McMahon. Not Ed McMahon. Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon.
Ed McMahon is there for some reason. Vince McMahon is there.
Yeah, it was his limo.
And
dang it.
You help him up, and he thanks you, and he asks if you can hand him his cane. He's got a cane, I guess. You hand him his cane, which will, for reasons that'll become relevant in a moment. And he says, thank you so much. And he says, to repay the kindness of you two strangers, he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out.
Wait. Is Vince McMahon
a dragon?
Like 80 feet tall and have red scales?
He's not. That's not where I'm going with this one.
Okay.
Good. Hey, good effort, though. Instead, he hands you a map to say thank you. And he says that this is a map to untold riches. If you follow the map, it'll take you somewhere. You open it up, and do you know where this is a map to?
Where is it, Gabe?
This is a map to the Dragon's Hoard. It's a map to the Dragon's Ring, or I don't know. Royal Rumble. There you go. So today's magic item, I'm sorry that was so wrestling themed. I didn't intend for it to be.
That's fine.
The magic item has nothing to do with wrestling whatsoever.
Wrestling.
Again, if I had known, I could have come up with something wrestling themed. So today's magic item is titled Gallows Gentleman's Cane, and it is submitted by Collins B via Discord. Apparently, this was originally created by Christopher Badell and Adam Rebataro for the Sentinel Comics RPG, but Collins B has adapted it to 5th edition D&D.
Nice.
So, this is a staff, and it is a legendary item that requires attunement. The Gentleman's Cane was created by a mage named Ignazio Gallo, who would find magical artifacts and then put curses on them. First, he puts a compulsion effect on them that pushes people holding them to use them, and to use them recklessly. Second, and usually more important, he adds a downside. Usually something will go terribly wrong with whatever it does after 1,000 uses. The uses do not reset by the user, so finding such an item carries immense risk if you are aware of its reputation. This item takes the appearance of a cane or gentleman's walking stick. Somehow that became wrestling themed. While you're carrying it, your feet never tire. Not useful in a race or anything, but it lets a gentleman walk around the cobblestone streets of a city all day without feeling like it when they got home. While attuned to the item, you gain immunity to exhaustion gained from traveling on foot.
Cool.
And I'll say that would be helpful at the job I work because I'm on my feet all day, every day. However, like I said, this is cursed. After the cane is used for 1,000 miles, the user will be compelled to continue walking for another further 1,000 steps, at which point all of the exhaustion that's been prevented by the cane for those 1,000 miles will hit the user all at once. Wow. This might kill some people, others might just be left bedridden or lame for a long time. So the more I read of this, the more I do feel like it is my job. After a certain amount of time, all the exhaustion does hit me all at once. I am left bedridden or lame for a long time, and then it's time to go back to work once that wears off. So
before I can leave this alone, I just have to say real quick.
Sure.
I think Mr. Fuji had a cane, and I could probably count on like both hands the amount of times he's used the cane to disrupt matches. So
okay.
But leaving that aside in the past, because Collinsby has submitted a very awesome item.
Yeah.
This effect kind of reminds me of like the end of did you see the Wolverine Origins movie where the girl touches his ankle and says, just walk?
Yes, I did. I don't remember that part, but I did see I saw the movie once when it came out.
At the very end, like she's got the power to touch people.
Oh, yes. I know. Sorry, I know exactly what. Yes,
and then so
I do
she goes,
know that.
Just walk and don't stop.
Yes.
That's what this sort of reminds me of. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Anything that gives you a compulsion to just go and do a task until you die.
Oh no,
is kind of cool.
It's very savage.
I don't know if either of you guys are familiar with the the graphic novel or TV show Preacher.
Oh, I've heard of it.
The premise is this child of an angel and a demon, I think, has this like immense power, and it possesses this ex-preacher, and it gives him what they refer to as like the word of God. Basically, he can tell someone to do something, and they will do it. They will be 100% compelled to do whatever it was he just told them.
Is this the guy who has the cross for a machine gun or something?
Oh, I think that's something else.
That's something else.
I think that's something else.
All right.
But at one point, this like government agency, he's caught up in this whatever, and this like government agent or something is like hounding him, and they're near a beach, and he turns to him and he says, "Go count the sand." And the guy, like, he gets this blank look on his face, turns around and just walks away. And then at the end of the comic, you see him, and he's like his clothes are all in tatters. He's like stacking the sand up. He's like built a little fort out of the sand he's been counting. And then you assume that that's just the end of his tale. But then many issues later, he shows back up, and he's like lost 100 pounds. He's like skin and bones.
Wow.
But he shows up because he has finished doing it, and now he's back to doing it. Anyway.
You know what? I think I have seen the first scene that you just were talking about, the Go Count the Sand.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was in a meme or a GIF, or like if my wife was watching it on like maybe Netflix or something, but I saw somebody like be like, "Go count the sand," and they did it. And I was like, this is a weird show.
Yeah. I haven't actually seen the show, but I've read all the graphic novel. So, so basically I like the cane itself. Here's the thing. I don't necessarily think that this is a legendary item. It's cool, and the curse is powerful, but I don't know if the regular benefit of the item is worth being legendary. It basically just makes you immune to one specific cause of exhaustion. Sure. If it was that you were immune to just all exhaustion, maybe. I mean, that's a powerful effect. Exhaustion is a pretty big mechanic in 5th edition, but it's not even all exhaustion. It's just exhaustion from traveling on foot.
Right.
It doesn't even make you like move especially fast. It's not like you could get from one side of the country to the other quickly. You just wouldn't have to sleep, I guess. I don't know.
Gabe, what if it carried the same effect as the dwarven racial ability where you can't be encumbered by what you're carrying? So it didn't speed you up, but it allowed you to keep going at your normal pace.
That's pretty
no
good,
matter
actually.
what.
Ooh, yeah.
So you could carry a heavy load and still move at the same speed.
Yeah, you can basically carry almost anything and just
I'm vibing.
If it can fit on your back, you can still walk at your normal pace.
Sure. But then
that might make it legendary.
Maybe. I mean, I still feel like that's only going to come up in a game rarely. Still doesn't quite feel legendary because legendary is like one step below artifact. You know what I mean?
What was the step below legendary then?
Very rare.
Very rare?
Yeah,
that's got potential.
Maybe very rare. Maybe. But and that the curse is just it's fun. It's if you use it for 1,000 miles, you just all that exhaustion just bam just hits you, and you're compelled to keep walking.
That's a campaign changing thing right there. That's a fun thing to have to work around.
Yeah. I now I kind of want to see the Sentinel Comics RPG thing is. I kind of want to see whatever the inspiration was for this. You know. But
what if it was a Warforged adventurer?
Okay, someone that's like immune to exhaustion.
Yeah.
Like, would they just get rusty, or?
That's a good question. Maybe even it would affect someone that was immune to exhaustion.
Yeah. Well, it's only 1,000 steps. I mean, like 1,000 steps.
Well, it's after you've walked 1,000 miles. Then you're compelled to walk 1,000 steps, and then all of the exhaustion hits you.
The exhaustion of the 1,000 miles plus the 1,000 steps.
Plus 1,000 steps, yeah. I'm always interested in curses affecting things that are immune to whatever the curse is giving. Like, I like the idea of a Warforged. It's like, guys, I'm tired. I've never been tired in my life.
Yeah.
Is this what it's like to be human?
I guess, yeah.
So something that like Data would want to get his hands on just so he could feel tired.
Sure. In Star Trek Generations, Data, he has his emotions chip, and then he drinks something, and he's like, I hate this. This is disgusting. I love it. So I think it's a fun item. Not really a lot to it. doesn't really do much, but theming is definitely cool, and I like the imagery.
Yeah, it's cool.
So yeah, that'll I think that'll do it for the Dragon's Horde today. Once again, that was Gallows Gentleman's Cane, submitted by Collins B via Discord. Thank you very much, Collins B. Jeff, if anybody else wanted to submit magic items for the Dragon's Horde, or questions for our main segment, or stories for the Funeral Pyre, or Retirement Village, or Laboratory, or whatever else we're doing in our final segment, how would they get those to us?
They could send us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com or join us on our Interparty Discord at bit.ly/interpartydiscord.
That's correct. Before we go any further, we have a giveaway to give away today. As usual, we're giving away a copy of 3 supplements from Crit Academy, the Warmind, the Skybreaker, and the Werecat, which are 3 character options for 5th edition D&D, as well as a few other things that I think Justin is including in that bundle. So Jeff, who is the winner of these 3 supplements today?
Today's winner is Patrick N.
Winner. Gobble, gobble, gobble. Yes, congratulations, Patrick N. You should be getting that in your email pretty soon. Be sure to let me know if you haven't gotten it in the next few days. And of course, be sure to leave Crit Academy reviews. You can leave a review for each of these products, including the extra ones that Justin is sending out. The more reviews they have, the more attention they get, and the more they can know to work on future products in the future. So please leave reviews. That's the least we can ask in return for giving out these great supplements. So big thank you to Justin from Crit Academy for facilitating this giveaway. Congratulations, Patrick N. Jeff, if anybody else wants to enter this drawing, if they want to be like Patrick N and win these 3 or more supplements, how can they enter the drawing?
They can enter the drawing by sending us an email at interpartyconflict@gmail.com with Crit3 in the subject line.
There you go. And before we go on, I want to mention we have 2 new patrons today.
Ooh,
we actually got 2 new top tier patrons, and one of our other patrons upgraded to be a top tier patron. So this is a great month for us.
I would say so.
Yeah. So the 2 new patrons I want to welcome, Jacob C. and Joshua P. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
You are awesome.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. We are super appreciative. I think that the day that we're recording this, our Roll20 game is in like 2 days. I don't know if there will be quite enough time to fit them in, but you know, if they can get into, if they've gotten in touch with me between now and then, because this episode isn't going out for several days, you know, otherwise we'll just fit them in next time. So
yeah. Okay.
So big, huge thank you, Jacob C. and Joshua P. We really, really appreciate it. You guys rock.
Woohoo.
Do you love Interparty Conflict? You know, the show you're listening to right now? Yeah! Then check out their Patreon at patreon.com/interpartyconflict. You can help support the show and get tons of bonus content too. Access hundreds of outtakes, dozens of short stories, periodic updates about the behind the scenes of the show, personalized media, a monthly Roll20 game run by Gabe himself, and more. Every month, green and red tier patrons get access to the bonus podcast InterPatronConflict, where Gabe and Jeff cover a wide variety of topics. Join right now and access the most recent episode, which might sound a little something like this. I don't know at what point that stopped being a thing, but now he is always in the bed, especially ever since we got a new mattress. He is always there. He is always taking up so much space. He is always pushing me out of the bed. Every single night I have woken up, since we got this new mattress, every single night I have woken up and fought with the dog for space.
Sometimes we go sleep in the living room.
Yes, sometimes.
Once I went to go sleep in the living room and Gabe was already in his chair asleep.
Yeah.
So it was,
and so
you got wasn't that within like the first week of you guys getting the mattress?
Oh, he loves this new mattress.
So you guys had got a brand new mattress, and there was a night where it was just Superhand sleeping in the bed.
Yep.
The important thing is he's happy.
Once again, go to patreon.com/interpartyconflict to help out the show and access all that bonus content today. And then one more quick thing, just check out the other podcasts on the Crit Nation Fellowship. Check out Crit Academy, critacademy.com. I believe by the day this goes out, their Kickstarter has ended. I'm very hopeful that it will have met its goal? If so, congratulations. If not, I'm sure they can find some other way to make that product, the Capes and Crooks, a reality some way or another.
Yeah. I mean, there's obviously there's plenty of people with interest in it. So one way or another, yes. I feel like they'll get it done.
Yes, absolutely. So
I definitely had interest in that product.
Yes.
And I even talked with you in the lunchroom about purchasing it based on the fact that you were going to be purchasing it.
Yeah.
Because a big factor is if I buy this, who am I going to play it with?
Yeah.
But I definitely I want to own this at some point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks. Everything I've seen about it looks really good. So again, I'm really hopeful that they've met their goal by the time the Kickstarter ends, because it's like on pins and needles at the moment. So
yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, critacademy.com. Check them out. Justin, Ian, and Austin make new and reusable content for players and DMs alike. Also check out Brute Force and Ignorance. They're an actual play podcast on the network. And check out a couple podcasts on hiatus. Check out D&D Character Lab and check out the Kind GM podcast. So got some great stuff on here. Good job to everybody. And let's go ahead and get into some questions.
Our first question comes from Stiltskin Kupo 84 on Discord.
Whoa, who's that guy?
I don't know. Some stranger. Have you ever taken part in a game where real-world foreign languages were a part of the setting?
Yeah. So this is a thing that Dave has been working on for a while, and we wanted to have him come in and talk about it.
So yeah, I'm asking this question because I am trying to put together multilingual games of D&D.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of started when I was starting to become friends with some of the people on the InterPartyConflict Discord.
Okay, yeah, it's a good community.
And so there's some people that are global,
yeah,
on that community, and I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we could play games globally? And at first it was sort of a curiosity, like what would it take to make this thing work? And
sure.
Then I don't know. Last time I was on the show,
mm-hmm.
I think I was still adminning and moderating for a dad's group.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I plugged that on the show.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm actually not moderating or adminning with them anymore because there were certain things that I wanted to do with those spaces that were going to go contrary to the brand. So like, for example,
okay.
If I want my group to be able to answer the needs of people who, let's say you were born in a different country, grew up speaking an entirely different language, you live in America now, you had kids over here, and you're like, well, I want my child to be able to speak the old language, but he's only ever around American people who speak English.
Sure.
So like, I wanted to be able to have maybe father and son or mother and daughter on this so that they can explore the benefits of learning a language. And it didn't just have to just be all dads. You know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
But that's part of their mission statement was this is a dad's group. So it kind of made sense for them to basically, they were like, you know what? Spread your wings and fly. Yeah. So they broke me off like 3 of the subgroups that were in the network.
Sure.
And so I inherited like 2,000 Facebook users across 3 Facebook groups, and I was like, holy crap. So I've never owned anything like an umbrella company or anything like that, so I had to rebrand it. I had to figure out like so I started I can't even really call it a company, I don't think, because we're not making money, but it's a brand. It's called
an organization, some kind of
I got a page on Facebook. It's called Raising Gamers.
Yeah, and we'll have the links in the show notes for all these.
Cool. Yeah. So a lot of my Facebook groups and Discord groups all revolve around gaming in some way. Oh, and another thing that I did, I didn't let any of them stay just dads only. So I opened up a lot of them to being parents, moms and dads.
Yeah.
And also with the foreign languages groups, you don't even have to be a parent. It's just you have to have a want or a need to learn a language. And so what it's called is International Gaming and Languages.
Okay.
So that has a Facebook group associated with it, but the main component of it is the Discord server. And it's actually the first public Discord server that I've ever launched. I've only launched private servers up to this point.
Sure.
So I put a lot of work into getting moderators. There's something like 20 or 30 moderators, I think, on my group, and I only have like we just recently launched like a couple of weeks ago, and we only have like 60 people. So it's sort of like you walk in the room and everybody's a moderator almost. But like,
yeah,
it's because I want there to be 2 or 3 people for each language. So in case anybody needs help down the road, they can always have 2 or 3 different people that they would.
Right. That's true. Yeah. You got to cover more bases because of different languages and stuff. So you can't just have a couple moderators. You gotta have somebody for each one.
Yeah.
Right. So this has been a labor of love for the past 2 years, is just cultivating this group of interested people.
Mm-hmm.
And I've come across people who are like, one of my friends, his username is Chris, and he's like, you know what? I grew up speaking Spanish. And he's out there learning. He's seeking out English-speaking Dungeons and Dragons groups for the purpose of learning better English, because that is going to make him practice his English more in a way that's funner than, say, like just going on some like a FaceTime, like pay an instructor to sit there and I'll talk to you and you talk back to me. And he's like, it's actually funner to trick yourself into needing to learn the language because you're going to get something cool at the end of it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that this niche is something that is not really exploited yet. And I think that I'm onto something big. And I hope years from now, I hope to be running campaigns that are fully bilingual.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Right now, we've only got like English campaigns that help people learn English.
Okay.
I mean, that's a big thing in itself. Like,
yeah,
a lot of businesses, just a lot of businesses are mostly English speaking and stuff. So like,
right,
people from all the country. Like, if you can turn learning English into a game, I feel like that's very approachable.
Yeah. So that's a big part of what we're doing, and I've also, not only is just like Dungeons and Dragons gamers who are enthusiastic about it, I've reached out to a teacher group. There's a teacher Discord where they talk about bringing Dungeons and Dragons into the classroom.
Yeah.
So I've been talking with them. Some of them are not specifically language teachers, but some of them are specifically language teachers. And I'm like, how can you guys help us build a game that will challenge people to learn languages through D&D? So we have like different campaign settings, and I'm not gonna like waste your time talking about all of them, but just for example, 2 of them, one's called Scourge of the North Sea.
Okay.
And so it's all about the North Sea, that's northeast of the British Isles.
Okay.
So English is in there, Dutch is in there, German, Danish, and at some point when we get enough people to write, there might be Swedish and Norwegian in there. Like, sure. So it's a very small sample, and I'm trying to work with the smallest sample of languages possible, because that is just a lot of things to do multiples of.
Yeah.
So I want to keep it limited. And we do also have a GPS life campaign, which it's Greek, Portuguese, Spanish. That's the GPS.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And then life is Latin, Italian, French, and English. So it's all of the Romance languages with like a little bit of Greek in there. It's just like a Mediterranean / Caribbean, like pirate ship adventure sort of a campaign setting to work in. So like, it really is just, how do we get a few different languages into a campaign together, because we can't possibly do them all.
Sure. Yeah. Because I imagine you probably only, you speak English primarily, and then I think you're learning 1 or 2 others, right?
Oh, I'm learning 7 languages.
Oh my goodness. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. I forgot about that. I feel like you've told me that at some point, and I think it slipped my mind.
Yeah, I do a different language for each day of the week. So.
Okay. Because I know you were working on like Duolingo, I think.
Yeah.
For a while.
And small brag side point. I just placed first in Diamond League.
Okay.
It's the first time I've entered, and I was like, I'm probably never going to be back here, so I want to win it.
Well, congratulations.
Nice.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I think that's really cool. That's a really cool thing to aspire for. And like, of all of the skills that you could try and cultivate, like that's definitely one that could have practical uses. You know, I mean, like I've painted a couple miniatures in the last year, but I'm never going to get use out of that. If you're learning how to speak another language or 7 other languages, that's like, there's lots of applications for that. And I think that's really cool. I feel like that's a lot more brag worthy than, a lot of other hobbies that are out there.
Well, low key, French is the only one that's really anything close to English.
Okay.
In my skill level right now, but
Yeah.
I'm learning the others.
Sure. Yeah. How long have you been working on this for?
So I've had the idea of it for 2 years. So
Okay.
anywhere between like a year and a half to 2 years ago is
Sure.
when I actually really started on it. And we do have a private server where we write all of the stuff.
Sure.
And that's a different server from the International Gaming Languages, which I'm plugging today, which is the public server,
Yeah.
where we expect to start playing some of the stuff.
Okay.
And some of the podcast listeners might also be foreigners
That's true.
in
That's true.
disguise. So, so I'm working with some of the listeners, and some people who are not listeners, probably have never heard of your show, but I found them in the teacher's Discord and whatever. And so we're working on the private side to actually pump out these adventures.
Okay.
And they're probably going to start off English, like 90 split with 10% of something else, but we're going to keep introducing more elements, like anytime you go into, say, the Spanish-speaking lands, you run across NPCs who speak Spanish to you, and you have to decipher what they're telling you, or there's signage that's in Spanish. So it challenges the group to work together interpersonally to figure out, okay, whose skills are up to par, who knows this stuff.
Yeah.
And then we also have the idea of like when the adventurers are level 1, they're going to be doing really easy, like ABC type stuff.
Sure.
And then when they're level 5, they start getting into more expansive language building structures, so more grammar, more thing. It opens up into more difficult stuff. Whereas, maybe towards level 20, now they're like 007, and blowing their cover in a spy type mission could really screw them over.
That's really cool. I love that, because the thing about languages in D&D, I feel like they never, this is probably just the games that I've played in, but I feel like languages never come up. And when they do, it doesn't really, it's basically just a little hurdle to jump over. It's like, okay, does anybody speak Goblin? All right, here's what you hear. And then you hear, and then they just say it in language everybody can understand. And so it's like, oh, wow, cool. We know Goblin, so we got a little bit more of the story that we were probably going to get anyway. Whereas if it is something like a real world language that one or a couple of the people at the group speak, then it's actually like, wait a minute, hold on, what did he just say? And then that player has to be like, well, he said something about blah, 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 monster or whatever. And so then they're able to actually put together what they just heard into, instead of just the DM being like, okay, here's what you heard, and I'll just explain it to you in English. And
exactly, Gabe. That's exactly the effect we're going for.
Yeah.
Just imagine the person who's not very good at English, who's trying to learn it through D&D, and they're at the table, and everybody else is talking and speaking, and everybody's like leading, because the one guy who speaks Spanish, he's just sort of in the background trying to hang out with everybody. But then you meet the NPC who is like dropping the major hint of what's going on. And all of a sudden now this Spanish player has agency to be like, well, this is what's going on in the game.
Yeah.
And they become like the lead character for a while. And it's a really cool way to like spotlight them as your diversity is awesome.
Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah, it's to an extent, that's like enhancing the immersion of the game because, again, it's like this is an actual language. I mean, it is an actual language, but again, like in D&D, I feel like most of the time other languages are just a little bit of set dressing. Whereas if it's something that you actually have to be a part of the world and actually be able to understand and then actually communicate it to the rest of your party, that's so much cooler.
Yep. I mean, think about the implications of being on a world map where you start in a city, in a central location, and it's English. And then for all of the directions of the compass rose, north, northeast, east, southeast, there's a different language. And there might just be some sectors that you'll never be able to explore because you don't speak those languages, but you can like maybe explore the 3 others or the 5 others or however many languages you speak. And that also kind of fits with the Wes Marches style of play that's becoming popular online now because you'll have some German players who are like, oh, you didn't do this mission? Well, that's what we found over there.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Man, that is cool. I also love the idea of parts of the adventure being gated by we just don't know the language, so we can't communicate with them rather than just being like, yeah, we weren't high enough level, so we'll go back there later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, you know, I don't want to become overly critical or snobbish, but to me, now that I know what I'm doing and what we're trying to create, the thought of just like, I'm going to take a feat, I'm going to spend a feat, and I'm just going to arbitrarily learn these 3 languages and be perfectly fluent in all of them.
Yeah.
All at once. It's like, oh, I'm really glad I'm working on mechanics to overhaul that system.
Sure. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I mean, like you've told me about this in the past, but I've never really grasped like exactly how the gameplay would be changed until just now. And like, man, that's great.
Well, it's one of those things like we get in a lunchroom, we only got like 20 minutes. Right. So it's like, oh yeah, Dave, that's really cool, but I'm eating my sandwich.
Right.
I get it. It's not a diss. It's just like, yeah, it's nice to be able to come to your house and like talk and like we get to be friends. It's really cool.
So yeah. So I mean, to answer the question, I've never done anything like this, obviously.
Right.
But I think that's really cool, and I hope that you're able to get it going sooner rather than later, and I hope it goes really well.
Awesome.
Like I mean, you know, I know a little bit of French, as anybody who listened to our April Fool's episode for this year would maybe be able to tell. And I've always liked the idea of learning, you know, being like fluent in another language. I've tried at times to learn like a little bit of Japanese, but I'm nowhere near being able to actually, you know, speak or like have a conversation or something. I can say like, I have a book. Do you have a book? You know, nothing really conversational. So I'm impressed, and that is way beyond anything that I could do. So good on you. Good job.
I'm going to be paying super close attention to the answers to this question when it comes up on the Discord.
Okay, sure.
I mean, not just because it's my question and I think it's cool because I thought of it, but like I could really use people.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. More people interested, the better.
Yeah. So listeners, if you are interested in helping out with something like this or taking part or whatever, get in touch with Stillskin Coop 84 on our Discord. He's on there, and
definitely.
Yeah, I'm sure that'd help out.
All right. Our next question comes from Thumivore on Reddit, and they ask, should sign language be usable for verbal components when casting spells?
Yeah. So I thought this was, you know, being language based, kind of. I thought this could be an interesting companion to talking about foreign languages and such. If you're playing a game of D&D or whatever, and you're casting spells, usually there are verbal components and somatic components, somatic being some sort of emotion or whatever that you usually do with your hands. Mm-hmm. Would you, if someone were speaking in sign language, like let's say they weren't able to speak normally, would you allow sign language to be used as the verbal components of the spell, possibly in conjunction with additional hand motions or whatever for the somatic components or whatever? Would you allow some sort of a combination of sign language along with spellcasting, I guess.
Well, so what comes to mind immediately is just like the mechanics of it and the balancing is that like things have verbal components so that it is noticeable by sound. So
okay.
So like if you're trying to stealthily cast a spell but it has verbal components, then it's you might need to make a check or something.
Sure.
At least I know that was definitely the case in 3.5.
Yeah.
I assume there's some amount of that in 5th edition.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, like flavor wise, you could easily just say yes it works, but your spells make popping noises. You're like the spell itself, because you're doing extra gesturing, like the magical energy that you're waving about is crackling and popping and making all kinds of noise. So it does still make the noise.
Sure.
So that, mechanically everything's the same, but you get the added flavor of like, you're not speaking an incantation, you're signing it.
Yeah.
And then maybe, and again in 3.5 there were like silent spell meta magic.
True.
Like
True.
silent spell, still spell, where basically you can get rid of the somatic or verbal components of a spell, and that way it's more easily to disguise it or hide it.
Yeah. And that 5th edition just has that bundled into one thing, and it's just subtle spell.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So I'm going to play the devil's advocate here. I'm going to say, how could we make this work? Like if I was a DM and someone was asking me this, I would say, without a doubt, absolutely 100%, if it's a ritual spell that they're trying to cast, yes. Yeah. Somewhere during the amount of minutes that it takes to cast this ritual, I'm sure you could fit in enough sign language to, complete the verbal component.
Sure.
If it was a spell like in actual play, like in combat or whether, it would be more of like, can you stealth or hide behind a wall or in a shadow long enough to give yourself like a little extra time?
Yeah.
I guess, could it be smart to maybe like, okay, casting a spell takes an action, right?
Usually.
Would you require the person, okay, you're going to use your action, but you're also going to use your minor action. So you can't be doing any other minor actions while you're trying to do this. So the action plus the minor action gives them the ability to use a somatic action as a verbal.
Okay, so you're saying like maybe allow it, but have it require an additional like the bonus action or whatever.
It's possible, or like or a feat or something.
Yeah,
I'm sure there's reasons that the dungeon masters could think of where no, you have to make a verbal component. Like if I'm trying to think of a spell that's like loud, like Tasha's laughter or something. Of course, that's an effect that happens to the target of the spell, not the spell caster.
Yeah, right, maybe a spell like
Shatter, maybe
Shatter, yeah, Shatter, or like even Fireball is a big explosion or whatever.
Yeah, so maybe some spells you can't, but I would say maybe at least a little over 50% of the spells you could try to finagle away to make this work.
Yeah. Balance-wise, I feel like the verbal components are there because they want it to be that you could be hiding around a corner, and if you cast a spell, somebody's going to hear you. Somebody is going to be able to detect that a spell is being cast just off of sound.
And it's another way for the spell to be identified.
Correct.
So it's just like...
Although identifying spells is kind of nebulous in 5th edition as it is, which is frustrating because in 3rd edition they had perfect mechanics for it.
Right.
However, I think that this, if you're open to kind of, exploring this idea, I think that it really brings up an interesting topic of, is magic created by the sound or is it created by the meaning? Because if you're in a room by yourself and you cast a spell and nobody's around to hear you, the magic still happens.
Right.
If a tree casts a spell in the forest, doesn't make a sound. So it's not necessarily that somebody has to hear you in order for the magic to work. So in that same vein, thematically speaking, why couldn't you sign the verbal components instead of speaking them.
That's a very good argument.
Because if it's just you are using your will to put the information out into the ether, and that's what's the meaning of your whatever is creating the magic or manipulating the magic or whatever, then there shouldn't be a reason why it couldn't work. Maybe the way that magic is taught nowadays, they don't teach that, so you would have to either be a sorcerer or a warlock, or you would have had to you'd be a self-taught wizard, I don't know, whatever. You know, maybe some sort of like homebrew mechanic, or not even mechanics, some homebrew flavor, some backstory and such to justify it. But thematically, I think that it raises a really interesting question. And if you're open to having that be how you define what magic is, I think it's really cool. I love the idea of someone, like, let's say someone is able to identify spells even if they're deaf because they can see what is being signed. They can see the semantic, whatever.
That's awesome.
I wish 5th edition used more mechanics for identifying spells, because then there would be more precedent for that, I guess.
Now, I have a question.
Yep.
It's only slightly, it's a different angle on the topic.
Okay.
Are there any monsters that have innate spell abilities, although their intelligence is not high enough for them to speak a language?
That's a good question. I feel like there's got to be a few.
Because that brings into question, if there's a verbal component of a spell and a monster isn't intelligent enough to have a language, can they cast that spell? And
that's a good question.
Like, there is no lung cancer in D&D or whatever, but
sure.
I mean, we've all seen the commercial of the lady who has like the metal voice box.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I've met people in real life that have those.
So they turn on the thing and that allows sound to come out, but it's like, what part of that is their throat doing the work and what part of that is the machine doing the work? And like, how would that interplay with spellcasting?
Yeah, that's in like a cyberpunk game or D20 Modern or something that incorporates magic and technology like that. Like that's actually a really interesting idea to play with.
That's really cool.
Oh my goodness. Now, so here's an idea to throw out here. Let's say you do have some specialized training. Your magic is cast a different way. You cast your magic through sign language instead of through verbal components. What if, as a result, the spells you cast are silent? So, like, you shoot a fireball that makes no sound. It's still an explosion. Maybe it knocks things over and those things fall and make noise, but the fireball itself is 100% silent.
Huh.
That could actually be like catastrophically bad for your party.
Yeah.
in certain cases.
I almost feel like if you want to introduce a big bad evil guy into your campaign that you want to knock the players speechless, no pun intended.
Oh my god.
Have that be how they function. And so now they don't they feel like they can't even rely on half of their senses for when the bad guy's near and so on and so on. So
yeah, a big bad that casts magic silently.
Yeah,
that's so devious.
It's terrifying.
It really could be a survival horror campaign at that point.
I was thinking, like, if I was watching a horror movie where a villain or whatever were able to blow things up silently,
definitely
that would be terrifying.
That would. Wow, we've explored this idea several different ways.
Yes. I do feel like there was an episode of Crit Academy a long time ago where they talked about possibly, allowing someone with a disability such as being deaf or being mute still being able to cast spells. And I think they touched on some of these. I briefly tried to find the number of the episode and I wasn't able to find it, but I'm sure they covered a lot of things that we didn't cover, so I'm sure their episode would have a lot of insight into that. But it's a cool concept, and it's definitely something that I think is open to discussion.
And I'm pretty sure for the person who asked this question, your answer is, if you're the DM, what is okay with you?
Sure. I do feel like there is a balance element. However, how often does that come up? How often do verbal components alert a guard or whatever?
Right.
I can count maybe like 2 times ever in my entire gaming career where it would have made a difference.
I feel like it is a thing that does happen, but it only happens like a couple times, like early on in a campaign.
Yeah.
When you're dealing with like sneaking through or like sneaking past the town guard or something.
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah. At some point, the meta of just I cast a spell and everybody around the table says, "Oh, that was great," but you're not interacting with it in universe as a thing that actually happened.
Sure.
It's just a way to melt some HP or
pretty much, yeah.
Move a thing.
It's a cool concept, though. I think that's definitely. I think we came up with some good stuff this episode.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that'll do it for our regular questions, but we do still have our social media questions. Our last question was, what does your character do during downtime between adventures? Jeff, do you recall what you said last time?
I can't remember, honestly. I can't remember if I had anything
I think we were
specific.
talking about what our Pathfinder characters do.
Oh, yeah. Which we actually haven't had too much downtime.
We haven't played since the last time we recorded.
Yeah. But there was a couple NPCs. There was like an NPC or two in town or something that I wanted to like get to know better. Because just to kind of build up my character's story some more.
Sure. I think I said my character just recently bought a horror book that she was going to read. I don't know. I guess that's what I got so far. I mean, my character took the alchemy dedication feat, so like maybe I'll do some crafting with that, but I'm not too sure. Sure. And Dave, you did respond on Discord. Did you want to paraphrase it? Did you want to read it?
Yeah. So actually, like over the 10 years that I've played, like I've noticed a lot of trends. Priests will go to temples and offer services like skill checks or unused spells, help heal people.
Sure.
Mages a lot of times just study their tomes to get more spells. I played a character one time who was based off of Queen of Quen from Final Fantasy IX.
Sure, yeah.
And she, because Quina is gender fluid, was the party chef, basically.
Yeah.
And nobody asked for there to be a party chef, but
that's true.
You kind of always need one unless you just hand wave it, right?
Yeah.
So, in my campaign as Quina, whenever we fought like this big monster or whatever, I would just hack it up and butcher it and put it in a sack,
Yeah.
and bring it back to camp, and I would put it in the campfire and make a meal out of it. And Quina was the build I chose was a priest that was like an entertainer priest or something like that.
Okay.
So actually the meal itself was a flavor way to dispense healing spells.
There you go. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I had a bard who, instead of singing or dancing or anything, I was having her do cooking.
Sure.
That's great.
She would, so like 5th edition, like you give somebody inspiration or whatever, or bardic inspiration. So I'd toss them a cookie.
There you go.
I remember one meal in particular, there was like this tentacled monster that came out and was like, the tentacles were large enough where it was wrapping around us and hurling us through the air.
Oh my goodness.
And so I had cut up some of the tentacles and I was like, it was like this king-sized calamari.
Yeah. That's
delicious.
Good. Yeah. I love the idea of like a chef character.
People were sort of like barfing at the thought of eating this in game after we
Right.
had killed.
Right. Over on Facebook, Darren W. says, sits and seethes in his anger and resentment towards his High Council Elven father. Oh, wait, my character. Oh, I'll get back to you on that. I'm not sure I get the joke, I guess. Dan W. says, drinks mead and shags his significant other. Not very interesting, but he's a simple guy. Fair enough.
There you go.
Sean M. says, Amaranth, the halfling fighter, pines for his half-orc barbarian love who's been kidnapped. Tim the warlock, probably something eldritch that if I were to tell you, you would surely go mad.
Nice.
Yeah, that works. William W. says, I haven't ever really had downtime yet, but if I did, my Forge Cleric Phalanx would use it forging mithril plate armor. That's pretty good, yeah. If you can get some mithril, use it for something good like plate armor.
Anytime to build anything for mechanical benefit is sweet.
Yeah, it works for me. Over on Reddit, Alistar the Minotaur says, my current character is an android in a Starfinder campaign. His day job is an adjunct professor of mathematics and statistics at the local community college on the flagship of the flotilla he lives on. However, his job security is tenuous at best currently because he also twilights as the pilot sharpshooter of the awesome survey squad, which as of late has done a remarkable job despite their best efforts to the contrary. It's a very task failed successfully kind of situation. That's pretty cool.
Okay.
I like the idea of moonlighting as an adventurer when you have a day job. Larison says, I have a current character in 5e who is a necromancer, but her day job is as a Sawbones-style pseudo-medieval physician. My reasoning was that due to the prevalence of easy-access magical healing in D&D and its thematic ties to religion, any world with that magic system would have pretty piss-poor advancements in actual medicine. Think back to the time when people thought leeching, balancing the humors, and giving everybody opium and cocaine was cutting-edge medicine. Enter Dr. Magenta Periwinkle, whose mission in life is to compile the definitive work on the anatomy of all races and peoples to aid in the development of actual physical medicine and learning. She spends her days when not on adventures caring for the local sick, performing gruesome surgeries, and cutting open cadavers to sketch their organs, which is much easier to do when you can reanimate them.
Man.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. I just want to say that's a great name, Dr. Magenta Periwinkle. It's two different colors.
Right.
It's quite a grisly theme.
Yes, it is. See, here's the thing. I feel like in a world with magical healing, it would be a lot easier to study medicine. I mean, what I mean is like, if you could cut someone open, take out their organs, study them, and then put them back and then heal the person, I feel like it would be easier.
Right, yeah. With high level magic, I imagine.
Sure.
You'd know for sure what doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
Right, yeah, you just keep throwing stuff at them until something works, and meanwhile you're just casting Raise Dead.
Yeah. It's like, it would be easier, but there would be less of a need, I guess, is what it would be.
Like if Dr. House had like scrolls of like true res or something, you'd just be like, all right, try this. No.
He would have never lost a patient.
Yeah.
Right.
Over on Twitter, we just got one. Stephen M. says, writes treatise on the relationship between puns and the channeling of thaumaturgic energy. So, coming up with jokes to tell while casting spells. That's pretty good. And over on Discord, we got a few. Collins B. says, as a forever DM, nothing. But as for my players, they have a few favorite things from the Acquisitions Incorporated book that they do during the downtime, which primarily are expansions of the Running a Business section of the DMG. Efficiency measures, shiny business plans, internal audits, and inventory management can be key to new profits. Philanthropic enterprises to gain the trust of the local town, schmoozing for information, and team building, which they've only done once over the course of the 2 years we've been playing. Yeah, running a business is a good way to do it, especially when you play out the different components.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it does get hand-waved a lot.
Yeah. The Beverage Tea says, not a dadgum thing. They're all a bunch of slackers that live off their laurels. Turds, the lot of them. Useless slacking turds.
Yeah.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Beverage. Lone Wolf Nate says, they work out. I don't know. I don't get to play much usually. Have only started being able to play with the Roll20 games and now the Taproom game my friend is running. I mean, yeah, working out is a good enough one. I feel like if you were an adventurer, you would probably spend a lot of your time working out.
Yeah, especially if you're a fighter.
Yeah, if your life's going to depend on it, absolutely. Floofy Shoob says, my mages always use cantrips to help villagers, cleaning and shaving, being the old magic Mr. Rogers with the villager children. On the road, I was the convenience wizard, setting up camps with secure shelter. If you want the populace not to revolt against wizardry, you gotta put in a little public relations time, you know? In the words of Red Green, if they can't find you handsome, they can at least find you handy.
You know what? This was my favorite one.
Yeah.
When I was silently reading it, I believe I left a comment like,
yes, that's PR wizardry.
PR wizardry.
That's pretty good.
Floofy Shoe, I name you the king for this answer.
Yeah. Autumn Wind says, actually, we hardly ever get downtime in the games I've played, but I'm always drawn to making characters with a tool proficiency. Folk Hero and Mulemaster Aristocrat are my favorite backgrounds, so if given the opportunity, I am totally making stuff. Black Magus 2651 says, my fighter types usually train, work with a guard or protection detail, also listen for stories of adventures to be had or items to be retrieved. My arcane casters research a spell or look up items to craft. Debrasor says, create a cult, maintain the cult, expand the cult, sell drugs.
Close runner-up.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Runner-up to Floofy on that one, yeah.
And then just one more, Dr. Taco 86 says, like many others, we don't do much with our downtime. The closest thing I could think of was when I had to step away from our regular game for a few weeks due to work. Once I was able to return, I discussed with the GM what I would have been doing. My gnome monk became a village guardian and painter, specifically painting images of my lost party members who were pulled into the Feywild. Once they returned, they also noted that in my spare time I grew a beard, although that admittedly didn't take much effort. Yeah. Pretty good.
Just going to put out a disclaimer that no kings that I crown are actually IPC.
Sure. All right, so that was our last social media question. The next social media question is, are there any languages you always make sure your characters can speak? So whenever you make a character, when you're choosing languages, if you get to choose languages, I guess, are there any languages that you always have to make sure that your character speaks?
I don't know. I try not to like metagame with my language choices.
Yeah.
Because I want there to be like, I don't want it to be just as easy as like, oh, who knows Goblin? You know Goblin? Okay, there you go.
Sure.
I feel like that's an easy way to like cheat some of the fun.
Sure.
Which I guess is why you're going through all that trouble.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. But I usually like try to stick to like the core race languages. So I always like, if I'm playing an elf, I'll grab Dwarven or
Sure.
something, just to kind of like round out the base that at the very least, I'll be like more likely to have a second language in common with one of the other party members so that there maybe could be some like more secretive talk.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I feel like back in the day, we used to always make sure that everybody in the party knew Sylvan.
Right. Yes.
Because it's a uncommon language. It's never gonna come up in the campaign, but we will have that as a secret language that we can all speak with each other.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Dave, do you have any languages that you always try to make your characters able to speak?
Moving into the future on the international gaming languages, I definitely will have characters who speak English and French.
Okay.
All the time. But I would have to say within 5e and even back to 4e, I like to pick the languages that, like, deep speech is really cool for me.
Sure.
I like to learn infernal or supernal, like any kind of a language that gives a piece of information that like nobody else is going to get.
Yeah. I feel like I would always try to get either celestial or infernal. Yeah. Because it's cool. Like, yeah, who am I going to meet that uses those languages? Whoever it is, I want to meet that person. You know what I mean?
Oh, and by the way, the DM said that this thing said this. Oh, guys, that's what this means.
Sure. So, yeah, I'm interested to see if our listeners have any sort of particular languages that they favor in whatever games. It's kind of hard in 5th edition now because you don't get as many languages as you used to. Like in 3rd edition, it was like, oh, your intelligence is 16. Yeah, just pick 3 languages. Mm-hmm.
Right,
nowadays it's you don't quite get to pick that many, but I'm sure there's still ways to do it.
Yeah, you usually get common and then maybe one based on your race, and then.
But when you take a feat, you get like 3 at a time.
That's true, and I think technically you can learn a language without costing anything except downtime.
Really?
So I believe it's either languages or it's languages and tools are the things that you can gain proficiencies in.
Oh, I hadn't read that.
Without actually having to spend a feat or anything like that.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Just a question of whether it's going to come up in your game.
Right. And then there's common ones and like exotic ones. So like
sure.
So something like Infernal or whatever, like you wouldn't have access to normally. But like, maybe the DM would allow it with the feat, but maybe not necessarily you just learn it unless it came up specifically that you like befriended a demon or something.
You're not going to go to a class at the Learning Annex to learn demon speech.
Right, yeah.
The other thing is that if you're learning it in your downtime, how long down the campaign is it actually going to take effect?
Yeah,
where you really need it is what you're dealing with now.
Sure, there are mechanics for that. It's like it takes a certain number of like however many, like 100 hours or something like that. So if it's like, there's going to be 6 months of downtime between this adventure and the next adventure, then there you go. Or if it's like we're going to have a couple months now, you can start to learn it now, and then between next adventure and the following adventure, then you'll finish it or something. It is definitely a thing you kind of got to like plan ahead for.
See, I've never been a part of one of those campaigns where there's like, we're going to take a break for a few months.
Yeah.
Or a week even. Like I've only ever been in a campaign that like plays like a movie that
it's
continuously goes.
It's definitely just a difference in style. So I've played in some campaigns that do one, some campaigns that do the other.
It would be kind of fun to play in a campaign where you take a break for a while.
It really kind of depends on the nature of the story.
Does it?
Because, a lot of things are, that thing immediately leads into this thing, and then that leads immediately into the next thing.
Right, yeah.
Whereas I've been in games where it's like, okay, we saved the town, so now what are your characters doing just in their daytime now that they're no longer on this adventure? And then the DM's like, by the way, we have a few months before the next event happens, so tell me what you're doing for those few months.
That is interesting because you kind of have to play out like, all right, what would my character do if it thought that was it? Like,
yeah,
that
or
was
if
my.
You don't have an adventure to be on right now.
Right. It's like, that was my adventure. That was my legacy. I just saved the town. I am now, I have done my adventuring. That is me. And maybe like they basically think they're retiring, but then like, but the player and the DM knows in a couple months time, something else is going to come up and they're going to have to come out of retirement.
Sure.
So do you sell your +3 longsword because you want the money for it, or?
I mean, maybe that's that would be an interesting thing if you were so down on your luck.
Yeah.
You're like, well, I mean, I'm done with the adventure. I really need money.
Yeah.
I got this epic artifact. What do I do?
Right. Yeah. They might have to sell it to like save the orphanage or something. And like, maybe they got to go on an adventure to try and get it back or something.
Yeah. Captain Jack Sparrow in Dead Men Tell No Tales. He was down on his luck and he sold his magic compass and then caused a bunch of bad stuff to happen.
What if the pawn shop guy that he sold it to becomes like a really influential NPC in the second part of the campaign?
There you go. Oh, geez, we're giving everybody bonus content. This is we're making up a whole campaign here.
Yeah.
So
sorry.
Anyway, no, it's fine. So are there any languages, listeners, that you always make sure your characters can speak?
All right, this is about languages.
Yes, it is about languages. So that'll do it for our questions for today. But before we close out, let's wind down. Let's relax. Let's take a deep breath. Whoa, Jeff, what was that?
I was just changing it up.
Okay. Let's remember those who have come before us, who have given their lives that we may have a better world to live in, as we toss another log onto the funeral pyre. Today's funeral pyre was submitted by DJ Certified on Reddit. Was running a game of Cyberpunk 2020. They had to do a data extraction job. The character sneaks into the building, gets the data, and triggers security. The rest is this running shootout as he tries to get into the parking lot. The character manages to avoid the scientists in the lab he was in, corporate security, some elite bodyguards, and get into the parking lot completely unscathed. They jump on their bike and are heading out to the parking lot when security catches up and shouts, "Stop him!" to the gate attendant. One headshot later, it was time to craft a new edge runner.
Oh.
Wow.
Here's the thing. As the GM, I did not expect this outcome. The character had evaded attacks from far more skilled guards. This guy was built with no skill over 3 and fairly mediocre attributes. His gun wasn't anything impressive either. However, the edge runner wore no armor and didn't put on his helmet when getting on the bike. So...
Ouch.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Hey, one crit can change everything.
Well, Gabe, you know what?
Yeah.
You should always wear a helmet.
There you go. Clink. All right. Well, that'll do it for today. Thank you very much, Dave, for joining us once again. It was fun having you on the show again.
Oh, thank you.
All right. To submit questions for us to discuss, items for the Dragon's Hoard, or stories for the Funeral Pyre, please email us at interpartyconflict@gmail.com. For show notes, links to media mentioned in the show, and running lists of questions and magic items, go to interpartyconflict.com. Join the discussion on social media. Find us on Facebook. We're on Reddit. We're on our Interparty Discord. Find us on Twitter @InPartyConflict. Check those out for our weekly social media questions. Your answers might end up on the show. Find us on the podcatcher of your choice. We're on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, YouTube, Spotify, anywhere you download podcasts. Please rate, review, subscribe, or just tell a friend. If you want to support the show monetarily, check out the rewards at patreon.com/InterpartyConflict. We have a few different tiers, so anything you can spare, even $1 a month, would go towards making the show better, and you'll get bonus content for it. Jeff, tell us about FriendQuest.
FriendQuest is a YouTube channel where you can watch us play video games.
There you go. Also, head over to bit.ly/InterpartyConflict to take a short survey about our show. What you like, what you don't like, etc. And just for taking it, you'll get 2 free printable board games, courtesy of the great people over at hollandspiel.com. And our music is made by Boxcat Games from Nameless the Hacker's RPG. So, Jeff, until next time,
Arrivederci.
adieu.
Adios.